Hey everyone, welcome to episode 19 of RippleLIVE. We're here, and I'm here with Mark Spencer, and we're super excited to answer your questions live. The show is all about live interaction with you, the Final Cut Pro 10 user, and a lot of you Resolve users are now joining us. So we're here to show tips and tricks and just have a lot of fun, answer your questions. So, hey Mark, how's it going?
Hey, Steve, doing great. Trying to keep healthy air. We're in fire season right here in Northern California. We've got a bunch of fires burning close by and starting to fill up the skies. And we're going to have a power outage probably tomorrow for several days. So we're lucky that we get to do the show. So we're glad we're back. We've been gone the past month, so we're psyched to do this show. And just a little bit of background, we're here to answer, like Steve said, your questions about Final Cut Pro and related applications and anything else kind of related to production and post around that. So there's a place in a chat window where you can ask your questions, and people already have asked a bunch of questions. They're also saying hello. Romania, England, Finland, Prague, welcome. Canada, Saskatchewan, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Italy, ciao, come stai? So post your questions there, and we will do our best to get to them. We'll get things started with a tip. If we don't get to your question, post it again. If you really want us to get to your question for sure, you can click the little $ there and make a nominal contribution, and your question will show up and be pinned there. It won't disappear in the scroll. It'll be big and pinned, and your contribution supports the show. So if you want to contribute to support the show, that'd be fantastic. Just to get your question answered, whatever, we appreciate it. But anyway, we'll try to answer everything we can in this hour. But to get things kicked off, Steve is going to show us a very interesting tip. I'm interested to see this because I have not done this, so I'm definitely paying attention to this one.
So I just recently got back from a trip from New York City, and I was hired by Blackmagic to teach a class on Resolve Fusion and some of their edit stuff. I'm just going to show you. They Blackmagic builds classrooms right on the show floor, and then you can sign up for free. So it's something they've been doing over the past few shows, and I was able to be part of that. And so I've learned quite a bit about Resolve since I really jumped in. Started the beginning of the summer. I did a full Resolve tutorial, and I'm using it for doing color grading. And one of the things that I think it's important to know is like how to generate a LUT. How do you create a custom LUT and bring it into Final Cut Pro 10? And this is another reason why you use Resolve, because Final Cut Pro 10 does not generate LUTs. You can bring in custom LUTs, but you can't generate them. So I just thought I'd show you how to do this in Resolve, and you can do it with the free version. You don't need the full $300 studio version, but it's something that I think you'll find useful down the road. So let me jump over into DaVinci Resolve, and here I have a single clip of Leslie Porterfield. She did a Worldland speed record on a motorcycle here, and we're going to go ahead and do a base grade to this. And the thing is, I would suggest that if you are going to create a LUT, and if you're using Resolve to do this or another application, that you make sure that you're giving your clip a neutral color balance. Some of you could see this. Well, I'm sure you're watching. The whole image has got a kind of a reddish color cast to it, and the thing about LUTs is that they're dumb. If you feed them data that's not correct, like if you didn't color balance or neutralize the image when you run that image into the LUT's going to give you garbage on the other side. So one of the things I would recommend doing before even creating a LUT in Resolve, or even another application, is make sure you get your color balance as neutral as possible. Now, one of the tools that I like about Resolve is there's two tools for getting this to look correct. And I have the clip selected here. I only have one clip right now, but if you look in the lower left, you have your color wheels section. And what's really cool is you have these little, right next to the, above the lift and above the gain, you have what's called black and white point pickers. And these are really great because I can click the black point picker and then move it into the image. And I'm going to find an image that's as close to or as pure black as possible. You don't want to have it to be gray. You don't want it to be like off-white. It's got to be as pure black as possible. And hopefully it's something that's like, it's clothing or something that has some detail in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and with the black point, this guy in the back, he's wearing like a black jacket. I'll go ahead and click that. And immediately we'll see some reaction in the color wheels. And what the black point does is it neutralizes any color in the lift or the shadows area. So if there's any color in the shadows area, it removes them or neutralizes them. In the lift wheel, it actually pushed the color a little bit towards green to balance it. Now, I also want to do the same for the white point. You have a white point picker. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to move my white point picker over something that's supposed to be white. And this van here is a white van. I'm going to go ahead and click the corner of the engine bonnet, as they say in England. And with one click now, kind of put that into more of a neutral balance. In fact, this was shot during midday, so it was a really, it was really an ultra warm image. I have the RGB scopes already open in the lower right, and people always ask me, well, if you were on a desert island and you can only choose one scope, what would it be? I would definitely say the RGB scopes, because you see a breakdown of like the color information. You still have the waveform, which shows you the luminance, but you can see here that's a fairly even balance between red, green, and blue. Now, I'm looking at this, and the black levels are sitting really right at 0, and I'm going to bring those up. And to do that, I'm going to go over to the lift master wheel, and I'm just going to drag on this, and I'm going to bring up. So I'm just going to push it up a little bit because it was a little bit too dark on the low end. So I'm just bring that up. All right, and right about there. Now, what I want to do is I want to give this whole image kind of a bluish cast. I want to create, like I said, a LUT, and I want to create a bluish tone. And one of the great tools for this is the offset wheel. So whatever you do in the lift, gamma, and gain, you could always use the offset to counter whatever's going on with these three wheels. So for example, if you have the lift, gamma, and gain set where you want them, then you can take the offset wheel and push the color in a completely different direction while still maintaining. Steve? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. If you're doing a look now, would you want to do that on a separate node so you can keep it separate from your balance?
Yeah, there's Mark raised a really good point. That's a really, really good point. So all of this is being applied to this node here. Okay, this is all the color correction information. So once I've corrected it, I'm about to apply a look, and what he's saying is you might want to separate the looks into a separate node so you have more control over the image. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and it's something I talk about in my Resolve training, and you do in your Resolve training. I just neglected to mention it. So right-click on the node and just go and add node, add serial, and it's a serial node, which means it's in series like Christmas lights. So you got your base grade here, which you can turn on and off. So you can click this little number, turn it on and off, and then I would apply my look to this node here, so it's completely separate from my base grade. That was his point, and I think it's good. So I select the second node, and now I'm going to use the offset wheel, and I'm going to go ahead and push the color towards blue. I'm just going to give it an overall kind of a bluish cast, okay, just like that. And then now, because we have these separate nodes, I can then turn off the second node, and it's only turning off the bluish cast that I applied from the offset wheel. Okay, good. So now we're ready to create our LUT. I can do a lot more, but this is the look that I want. So to create a LUT, you just go over to the clip in the timeline. This is called the thumbnail timeline. I only have one clip, but if you right-click on it, you can go up and you can, or actually go down. You'll notice here it says Generate 3D LUT Cube. So I'll go ahead and select that. And I will name this. I'll call this Leslie Salt LUT, and I'll just save that right on the desktop. Save it there. Now I'm going to jump back into Final Cut Pro. I'm going to jump into Final Cut Pro 10. So I have a string out of clips here, and let's say maybe I want to. There's that same clip here, and I'm going to select the clip and then press Command 4 to open the inspector, and make sure to actually. I'm going to go to the video settings. Basically what I'm going to do is I got the inspector open because I'm going to make some changes here. I want to apply that LUT. So where do I find that LUT? Well, that LUT is found in your effects browser. So if you press Command 5, you can open it up, and you're going to find custom LUTs in the color section of your effects. So here I have an item said custom LUT. So I'm going to just drag that on top of the clip like that. So now it's applied, and I have the inspector open, clip is selected, and you'll notice the custom LUT appears at the top here. So right now it says none, which means there's no LUT applied. And I've been applying a few LUTs, so Final Cut keeps a running list of LUTs you've used. I'm going to go ahead and find the one that I saved out of Resolve. So I'm going to click Choose Custom LUT. And go to the desktop, and there's the LUT that I saved. There it is, Leslie Salt LUT, and I'm going to just click Open. Okay. And immediately, that LUT that I saved out of Resolve is now applied in Final Cut Pro 10. And then you can do some other things that you can mix the LUT, and then you can color grade on top of the LUT if you want. You can jump into the color board, and if you wanted to, then you can apply a color corrector, and then you can go further with this. You can bring down the shadows and stretch the contrast, do what have you. Okay, so the point is that because the custom LUT is an effect, it appears in the inspector as kind of in a list here, and you can change the order of these. So like, for example, you want the LUT applied before or after, you can do that. And that's kind of the nice thing about custom LUTs, as opposed to applying a camera LUT, which applies the camera LUT to the clip before you add it to the timeline. Anyway, so that's a pretty simple workflow, and I think it's kind of important for people to understand, that you can create custom LUTs and pretty simply in using DaVinci Resolve, and then bring them in and use them in Final Cut Pro 10. So there you have it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Great. That's awesome. Okay, we've got a bunch of questions here that we can start to get through here. I'm just going to start from the top. So yeah. Dennis Andrews was saying, I shoot weekly 4K video, which I edit at 220%. Mm-hmm. So going a little bit beyond, full resolution there. But you can often get away with blowing up something a little bit like that. You can go to 200% and you get pixel for pixel. If you're in a 10K, I'm assuming what he means is editing 4K video in a 1080 timeline, by the way, is Dennis, what I assume you're doing there. Is there a way in Tools Complete to control camera panning left and right as the speaker moves? I know you can with keyframes, but it really work intensive. So he's referring to Ripple Tools Complete, which is one of our plugins that allows you to do there's a ton of different tools in there, but there's a few, and most of them are trackable. So you can track like a drone shadow to remove it, or track something to remove from a shot, or you can track and blur a logo and things like that. So it's really not built to do what you're talking about. You could potentially do it in motion, because you could bring it into motion and you could track that person's face in motion and then link a camera to that movement, so the camera would be linked to that movement and would move with it. And then you could also add some other parameters to kind of smooth out that camera movement. So that would be one possible way to do it, is doing it in motion. Otherwise, you could look at, I don't know what else you would do in Final Cut. It's an interesting question. I was like, maybe there's a way to actually make a plugin that would do that. So it actually spurred an idea in my mind about investigating if it's possible to make a plugin that would do that. So thank you very much for the question. Steve, I don't know if you have any other input on that.
No, I think you answered it pretty well.
Okay. Colonel Sean asks, what's the obvious trick for adding audio keyframes to control volume during playback?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's anything obvious about it. I mean, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. I mean, all audio keyframes are added either manually. There's no automation like say Logic where you play back in
Right.
your mixer and you're adjusting them and it's adding what's called keyframes or what's called automation data. There's no way to do that in Final Cut Pro 10, at least playing back in real time. So yeah,
Right.
that's something that's been requested quite a bit. There's ongoing, you know, there's a lot of people that really would love to see some sort of a role-based mixer to be able to do that sort of thing. I created a tutorial not too long ago where I showed you how to like get your content out of Final Cut and just bring it into Logic where you can do exactly what you're suggesting. Not only can you do it in Logic, but there's an iPad app. I showed how to actually mix a Final Cut Pro timeline with rolls using your iPad, using this free Logic plugin that's on the App Store. So it can be done. It just can't be done directly in Final Cut Pro 10.
Maybe we should put a link in this when we publish this in the
Yeah,
description field to that tutorial because that's a great one.
yeah,
I'd want to know more about what he or she is trying to do
yeah,
because if it's just like somebody's voice and it's getting
yeah,
loud and soft and they're trying to control that over time, rather than try to automate that during playback or to play a bit and adjust it, is to consider using like a compressor limiter on that in order to compress that dynamic range down so you don't get a lot of bumps up high and down, but use a compressor to actually affect that. Steve's got a great tutorial about sound editing in Final Cut Pro
yeah,
that goes in detail about how to use compressors.
yeah.
Let's see, Gurum asks, what's the easiest tracking software out there? I tried Mocha, couldn't master it. I'll take one stab at that.
Yeah, go
It
ahead.
depends what you're trying to do. Like we have a couple plugins that allow you to track those plugins. And for instance, Ripple Callouts Complete, if you're trying to track text or callouts or arrows to the screen, they all have tracking built in and it's dead simple to use. You literally just drag a box around the thing you want to track and click a button and it tracks it and it'll track that call out to it. Also, Ripple Tools Complete, if you're trying to blur a logo or remove a shadow, tracking's built in that and it's super easy to track. So check those out. But if you're trying to track your own, I don't know, graphics or things to the screen, I hear good things about CoreMelt's tracker. CoreMelt has a tracker that works in Final Cut Pro 10 that's supposed to work quite well. And it uses the Mocha tracking engine inside it, but it's not the separate Mocha app. But they license the Mocha functionality in there. So CoreMelt, TrackX, SliceX, both have tracking features.
So Peter Rude's asking, unfortunately, my 97-year-old grandfather passed away this week. I'm sorry to hear that, Peter. I had two grandpa. My grandpa is really important to me, so I feel for you there. You want to make a slideshow? There's a lot of ways to do it. If you're looking for themes, I know Peter Wiggins, Industrial Revolution, has a slideshow template that we've actually demoed on a map break. It's a pretty cool little plugin. I'll have to find what show that was. Maybe we can look it up and then post it. But it was a pretty decent slideshow. Made some themes. You could do some. It was like kind of a glass themed slideshow. I actually haven't done it in a while, so I haven't really looked. I mean, for me, I tend to just do pushes and zooms and Ken Burns and animate things. But if you want actual graphics with things like cut out and visuals to accompany the photos, I think you need to do some looking around. I don't really use them, or I haven't used them. Any thoughts on
One
that?
suggestion, Caps Media Center suggested using Apple Photos, which is honestly, it's easy. You just take all your photos, you dump them into the Photos app and say make slideshow, and it makes an animated slideshow with multiple themes you can choose from. I did for my parents had a 50th wedding anniversary a couple years ago, and I was able to take hundreds and hundreds of photos, throw them in and then you just choose a theme, and it does the whole thing. And I just threw it up on I connected an Apple TV to their TV and let it loop, and it worked great, and it was really easy to do.
So Harry Redinger, how do I connect my Logitech Brio camera to Final Cut Pro? So Logitech makes a bunch of web cameras. So I haven't tried this. Mark, you probably could speak more to this than I could, but I would assume
Yeah.
you could plug it right into the USB port and then go into your your capture settings, and it just shows up as a camera, right up at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the trick is, I'll just share my screen for a minute, and go to Final Cut here. The trick is, it depends what you're trying to do here, but basically you go to the import window is the trick, Command I to the import window, and any cameras you have connected will show up here. So if I choose the FaceTime camera, you'll see me here. You see the rest of my studio kind of in the background there. But any other cameras you've connected will show up. You just select it right there. And then from there, what do you do, Steve? You can record from right here?
Yeah,
if you have a camera.
Yeah, you just click the import button and it just starts, capturing it as a movie.
Oh, if you just click import, it'll start capturing. Yeah, it'll start basically capturing a live stream of what you're doing and record it.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what you do.
Awesome.
Let's see. Known Final Cut Pro 10 bugs from recent upgrades. And actually, this is a good thing to talk about because there's a couple things that have happened recently. One is that Final Cut Pro updated from 10.4.6 to 10.4. Coincident with Catalina coming out. And it's tricky business. So 10.4.7, you have to be on at least Mojave or Catalina to upgrade that. So you can't be on High Sierra. Personally, I think, my opinion, then Steve, I'd be interested in yours, I feel like upgrading to 10.4.7 is fine. And it has the new metal architecture, completely been rewritten on the metal architecture is the primary thing. So you're going to get significant speed improvement on any machine, probably 15, 20% faster renders, exports. Not a lot of new features, although there's a great new color feature, and there are a couple things for high-end HDR work. The thing is, Catalina is a little trickier. So I've installed Catalina on a separate partition. These days, it's super easy to create a separate partition on an existing boot volume. You don't have to, you just create it. You used to have to create it on a separate drive that's empty, but now it's easy, and you can throw Catalina on it and check it out. The thing about Catalina is there's a lot of older media formats. It's pure 64-bit, so any 32-bit apps won't work, and there's a bunch of media that you may have that's old formats that aren't going to work. So one thing I'd really recommend is, in fact, somebody later was concerned about my Adobe apps won't work and something else, and that's not true. Any current versions of your Adobe apps are going to work, and I forget what the other one they mentioned. Anything that's current will work, but if you're using like a version, Photoshop 5 or something, because it's not a subscription model, I don't know if that's going to work. And there's a way you can figure out exactly what's going to work and not work. And maybe I could share my screen and see if I can remember how to do this. If I go to the Finder and say, actually I go to About This Mac, let's see if I can remember to do this, and then I go to Steve, help me here. I can't remember. Is it the system report? I don't want to generate. Yeah, system report. And then you go to apps, network, software, applications. And then this will take a minute. And you can sort them by whether they're 32-bit or not. It'll tell you you've got installed apps that are not going to work on Catalina. This is a big deal. So I'm cautious. I've upgraded to 10.4.7 on one machine. I'm in the middle of a big project, and I'm sharing that project with other editors. So we're staying on 10.4.6 because I have one editor that's still on Mojave and doesn't want to upgrade. Oh, she's still on a High Sierra actually. So here I've got this ran. So I've got applications selected, and sorry for let me hide everything else there so it's a little not so messy. And then if you scroll over here, it says 64-bit, so I can sort. Let me drag that 64-bit over here and make it wider so you can sort by 64-bit. So I've clicked the little thing to sort by it, and here's yes, 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 yes. But if I click, it'll say no, and here's all this stuff for me that is not 64-bit on here, and these may be old versions. GarageBand 6.0 I still have sitting on here. You know, I've got a variety of old iTunes and different stuff on here. So this is a way you can locate stuff that may be problematic for you. So you want to check that out. How about you, Steve? What's your feeling on 10.4.7 and Catalina?
Well, I have a general rule about OS upgrades. I usually don't upgrade my OS until several OS updates. Like right now, I'm running Mojave. I'm happy with it. Everything seems to be spinning along fine, and you know, I just don't do it. I don't go straight away to Catalina. I'll wait several months because we have a lot of stuff. Plates. We're spinning a lot of libraries open. I just hell hath no fury like an OS update is what I always say. So
yeah, this is a big one.
It is. I'm not. You know, for us, we do a lot of encoding for our tutorials, and we use a custom QuickTime plugin that we've used for years, and it works great. We're able to get these file sizes that, you know, these big, you know, 20-minute movies down to like, you know, under 100 megs. And right now we can't use that plugin because it's, like you said, it's 8-bit. So it's excuse me, yeah, it's an 8-bit. 32-bit. Sorry, yeah, it's 32-bit, and we're not going to be able to use it. So we've had to play a lot with compressor, going in there and really tweaking settings and see if we could match what this third-party plugin was giving us. And I've got it close. I really have able to tweak the H.264 settings to where we're getting it within 10-15 megs, which brings me to another point. That's something that we're getting a lot of requests for, and if it's something that you're interested in, I'd love to hear you pipe in on this. Is that I want to do a whole like tutorial on compressions, Ripple compression secrets, where we go through like, you know, how you would approach compressing something for YouTube, Vimeo, or even just your website. It's something that's kind of I've wanted to do for some time. It's not the most sexy subject in the world. I don't particularly like, ooh, let's talk about bitrate and keyframes and you know, intraframe encoding and, you know, that sort of thing. But it's really important. I mean, a lot of people use the encoders that are built into YouTube and Vimeo. They're fine. But if you're doing stuff that you really want to maximize quality and get the file size down, like maybe for your website or off a streaming server or something, it's something that we're going to be looking at. So back to the question. That's one of the main reasons why we haven't jumped to Catalina, is because of that. And until I get that worked out, and then of course waiting for the updates, I'm just not gonna do it. You know.
Yeah. So. In fact, Chris Fenwick chimed in and said he's currently running 10.4.7, and he changed all the machines in the middle of our largest project job of the year. You know. All right, I'm glad it worked out for you, but I'm still not going to Catalina. You know, he's doing it on Mojave, and I think that's between the two of those, the safer one is 10.4.7. Right. You know, we've been using 10.4.7. Happy with it. I'm just using a little bit of both. I'll mention two more things about this. We came up with a bunch of tutorials about 10.4.7, including one about how to upgrade. Yep. I definitely recommend you check that out. So one thing is, some people still have automatic updates turned on their Mac. Turn off automatic updates, for God's sake. You don't want to get you don't want to get an automatic update to 10.4.7 or a Catalina or anything. Turn that off. By the time the thing comes out, it's too late to warn you. It's done. So that's number one. And I totally forgot what number two was. But turn that thing off. But watch that video because it explains. Oh, I know what number two was. Before you upgrade Final Cut, zip up your current version. Just click on it and compress it, because you can save that. You can always go back. You can delete your new one and, you know, zip up the new one, and then you can go back. I've been going back and forth constantly. I was doing a lot of testing between the two and projects between the two. I have projects I didn't want to upgrade. So I've got both, and I can go either way, 10.4.6, 10.47. I don't care. I can do, you know, I can do anything. Once you zip it up, you can go back and forth. You can do either one. But also, finally, last thing is just, if you've got libraries that you want to update to 10.4.7, you can't bring them back. So you probably want to duplicate those libraries before updating them to 10.4.7. If you've got external media, it's no big deal because it's a small library, duplicate ahead. But if you've got managed media, big library, maybe consolidate all the media outside, then duplicate it, for your 10.4.7, and then you can always bring that media back in again. So anyway, the tutorial goes in more detail on that stuff, but you've got to be careful about the whole upgrade process.
So JB Manos is asking, if I had an image of a document, not a title, and wanted to highlight the text on a picture in FCP 10, what'd be the ways to do that? Does one of your plugins do that? Some sort of like, doesn't Titlemation or something highlight text?
There's a highlight built into Ripple callouts complete. So that's one way, but you could do it in motion. You could actually do it in Final Cut. I think somebody wrote in there is take a generator, crop that generator down on top at lower opacity or a blend mode. I think somebody wrote it in here. And animate the crop. Animate the crop. You could totally do it.
Yeah, you don't need a plugin for that at all. Good point.
We had somebody contribute, Big Water, $10. Thank you very much. So let's make sure we get to Big Water's question. I have a Scarlett 2i, which I do as well, right here.
So do we.
For my voice over, and so do you. Yeah, I have one because you have one, actually. For my voiceover mic input, Final Cut Pro has drop support. What do you recommend for XLR mic connections? I'm not having a problem, but I don't have my mic currently. I'm wearing a Sony ECM lav mic that's plugged into a juice linked that's running through my GH5S. It's looping through so that we have sync on this. I don't know about drop support. Do you mean drop support in 10.4.7?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. It's just a US. I imagine like the Scarlett comes out. It comes out USB. It comes in USB. It looks like any other USB mic. So I'm not sure. I don't think FCP. I don't think Apple dropped support for it. There's something going on there.
I'd like to know why you think they drop support. Is there a document that says that somewhere, or need to know a little more about that? But we'd like to try to help you out with that. But
there's so many things I hear.
Units.
I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I've been. Like for example, like I bought this little Shure like A to D converter. It's got a USB on one side and an XLR on the other, and it's got a preamp built into it. And
hold it back. It's out of focus. Pull it back a little bit. No, towards your face. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, now I can see it. Yeah, cool.
All right. Yeah, so it's a little Shure. It's got again USB on one side, XLR on the other. It's got volume control. It's got a little volume. It's got a preamp. I use this all the time in a pinch. To get just any XLR. So, I mean, the Scarlett's a great box. It really is. And there's no reason why it shouldn't work. I could say pretty much with certainty that Apple didn't drop it as a item that doesn't support it. It's just like you said, a USB pass-through. So I'd have to know a little bit more.
Let's see. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. What's KJ Post asked, what's the best or fastest way to input metadata for a bunch of clips from at least 4 different cameras? Depends on the metadata. Like if there are multiple cameras and you're trying to name the angles, you can select them all in the browser, and in the inspector you can enter the name of the camera at once for all the same cameras. It depends whether you're trying to enter metadata in the inspector or you're trying to enter keywords. But we've got a bunch of tips for how to really quickly add keywords to clips. I mean, Steve's got 1 million of them in his core training. Do you want to talk about that at all, or can you say more about the metadata? I mean, because keywords, man, super fast with keyword HUD and using keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the question you were even reading from. So.
So it's KJ Post. If you scroll to the Big Water's post, and you go up from that, if you go up about 5 from that, there's his question.
I think you answered it pretty well. You could select a bunch of clips and applying the metadata to it all at once. It's a really great way to do it. I think it'd be kind of cool at some point if Final Cut supported like import and export of metadata sets. So like you can like create a set and then as like a file and then import and apply that set to whatever clip you want. Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
There's also there's Shot Notes. I would look at Shot Notes X because there's ways to enter a bunch of data in a spreadsheet if you're fast with that and bring it all at once in from there. So Shot Notes X is Sam Messman's product, which is I hear great things about that. If you're just talking about keywords, I find the fastest way to add keywords is set them up first in the keyword HUD where you've got registers, and you can just select a bunch of clips and hit Control 0, Control 1, Control 2, and add those keywords really quickly. And you actually don't even need to click on clips to do that. You can literally hover the mouse over clips and hit keyboard shortcuts as you go. You don't have to click on anything. It's super, super fast.
Yeah.
Oh, so here we go. Brad Walker, unable to open old .mov file since updating to Mac OS Catalina. Error, incompatible media file. Any tricks? So not just any old .mov file won't open. I mean, there's very, very old codecs, like, you know, old DVC Pro or DVCam or DV, mini DV, all that should still work. In fact, there's an article I will find and bring it up on here in a minute. I have to find it first, that explains exactly what's compatible and what's not.
Yeah, they're
and
all
so
really,
Steve, maybe
really,
you
they're
take over
really
for a minute
old.
and I'll find that.
Yeah, it's an Apple K-based. There's articles like all of these
Right.
really old codas, like, you know, I don't know, Sorensen and I don't know, Motion Photo JPEG. There's just ones that I would never use or haven't used in years. So,
Parian.
you know, yeah. While you're doing that, I'm going to answer Shane P's question. Shane, thanks for the super chat contribution. He's asking, can the source files located in the library bundle be renamed? Clips had already imported. If it's renamed in the browser, the reference clips in the library bundle retain their original file name. I guess I'd need to understand why it's important for you to actually rename the source files in the library. So the way it works in Final Cut is once you import and the clip is in the library, it's in the library and Final Cut's database is managing it. I mean, in the old days, like in old Final Cut Pro 7 days, there was some advantage to making sure the clip name and the source file name on your hard drive match. But with Final Cut Pro 10's metadata-driven database, I just don't see any reason to rename the source file because Final Cut's tracking it with metadata in the library. And but to answer your question specifically, no, you cannot rename the source files from Final Cut Pro 10. The only way you could do it, of course, is go to the Finder and rename them. But then once you do that, of course, Final Cut Pro is not going to be able to relink to them because it's looking for the connection based on the metadata, the text name. So I would need to understand more why you find it important that you have to have the source file's name when, again, the database itself does such a good job of tracking all of the clips in the library. And they, you know, in a way, it's Final Cut, and to use a $20 term, Final Cut is just like a giant abstraction layer between you and your media, where you're doing everything you need to with the media at the metadata level, at the application level. So, and Final Cut's tracking all that. So again, I don't really see the need for renaming the file, but you'd have to kind of tell me why that would be important to you. But there isn't any way to do it specifically within Final Cut. Okay. Did you find that doc, Mark, or no?
I did, but I got to, give me 1 second. I found it on one machine. I got to go in another machine. There, I got it. Okay, so let me share my screen, start sharing. So this is the article. I'll show you the URL. I don't know if you can see it, Steve, up there now.
Yeah, I can.
It's showing. Okay, so here's support.apple.com/en-USHT209000. But the key thing here, it explains the whole thing. And basically, you need to be on Mojave or lower when you're testing. Once you're in Catalina, you can't do this, but because you have to convert in an older version. So to answer who asked that question, you need to convert those media files to something like ProRes, and you need to do it. You can't do it in Catalina. So if you scroll to the bottom of this, it'll show you formats compatible with Catalina first. So, you know, and there's old animations, really old. It's compatible. ABC HD, DVC Pro, Motion JPEG, Photo JPEG, you know, stuff you'd expect. Now, here's the stuff that's not compatible. And it's, you know, there's a lot of stuff in here. Some of the big stuff is sort of the DNxHD, DNxHR, you know, the Avid codecs. That's kind of a big deal. But if you've got some of this old VP codecs, that was really common. Parian codecs, flash video, none of this stuff is going to work. So it needs to be converted. So that's part of the reason I'm also keeping something in Mojave is I just might have some old files. I haven't checked everything yet. One thing you can do is if you've got a whole bunch of media is just bring it all into Final Cut under Mojave as leave in place. Just point to all that media and import it all, and you'll get a warning if any of it's bad or is incompatible. I shouldn't say bad, incompatible, and then you can convert it. Windows Media, any of this stuff. So this is a good place to look to see if you have QuickTime files that were encoded as pings or Targa files. They're not going to be compatible. So it's going to affect a lot of people, and I know what's going to happen is it's going to happen a year from now. It's going to be like, what? What's going on? I can't, that's what's going to happen.
What?
So
for the love of all that's holy, what? All right. By the way, Edgar Davis, thank you for that contribution. Really appreciate it. Crazy Red Eyes, thank you. No, thank you for following us. YouTube, really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tom says other cameras won't work with that. Well, I'm going to test that. When I showed the FaceTime camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't quite reach. I've got another camera here, but I'm wired in. But I will test that right after this. But that's surprising to me. But I will test that. Maybe another camera won't work directly in Final Cut.
Yep. Thank you, Mix Wizard, Mix with 2 X's for the contribution.
Oh, wow.
And Yak NBO or Yak Nemo, Yak N silent. N is silent, Yakbo. Thank you. By the way, I'm going back to the comments, and there are a lot of people that really want me to do a compression tutorial. So thank you for that feedback. I'm going to get to work on that.
So actually, Mixed Wizard had a question. When will Ripple Training or Pixel Film Studio start making plugins for DaVinci Resolve? I can't address Pixel Film Studio, but we're looking at that. I can tell you we're looking at it. It's on our list to check that out and see if it makes sense, because we can certainly make Fusion titles that would work in Resolve. So not in the immediate future, but it's definitely on our list to see if it makes sense to do that and release a pack of at least like titling plugins for Resolve.
Right. So there's some more comments on like renaming and shot notes is again a good solution. And I guess there's this one says I usually rename clips on import. For example, Sony A7 files with latest version of Hedge. You can automatically rename files on import.
Hedge is great. Two thumbs up for Hedge.
Yeah. So that's something to be. I'm going back to Shane's question about assuming you want to make sure your file names match your clip names when they come in.
Actually, I have a good example of that because I just finished this this big thing we do at Bioneers every year for the 6th year, where we're importing a terabyte of data every day, and we have a bunch of camera files that are named Cam 1, Cam 2, Cam 3, and each day they're named Cam 1, Cam 2, Cam 3 again with the exact same file name, which is really dangerous. So we use Hedge to do the copying because it does simultaneous streams of copying. We got down a terabyte now. It used to take 2 hours. We got it down to hour and a half, hour. This year we got it down to about 25 minutes using Hedge and super fast SSDs. But we use Hedge to rename those files. So definitely recommend that guy. Oh, more contributions. Thank you very much. David Mathis, Mike Thomas, thank you. Wow.
Ben Weil says, try Edit Ready. Oh, that's, yeah. So there's definitely solutions out there for getting your very, convoluted camera naming conventions changed to something more meaningful.
I think Tom was he was replying to Ben's question about MTS files. Because you can see, if you look right above David Mathis' $5 contribution, Ben Weil says, I'd really like to know how to tackle .mts files in Final Cut. It really grinds the app to a halt whenever I edit with it, even when it's not a big library. You probably want to optimize those files.
Yeah. Right. So I want to get to Yakbo's question. He did contribute, and I don't want to skip your question. So let's look at that. There's something about, let's see, I just went by there. Hang on. I got to scroll up to it. Oh yeah.
It's right under yes.
I didn't quite understand it the first time. Maybe you can parse it for it. It says, how come my data in the Final Cut Pro 10 load in mode, 3 files, one huge, the other 2 about 15% each would not sync up with my other multicam files, but the data from the card drag and drop did.
It means importing versus drag and drop.
Yeah, I think maybe he means importing, using the import window versus drag and drop. So I think maybe he's talking about the import window. So when you open the import, you have 3 files, but he couldn't get them to sync up. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
I have a suggestion about that.
Yeah.
I'm also not sure why something that's imported to the import window wouldn't sync, but if you drag and drop, it does sync.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. But if you have very huge files, let's say they're very long files, and you're trying to sync them using audio for synchronization, I'm also going to assume that that's what you're doing, that you don't have timecode sync or a clapper or something. One thing that can really help audio sync go faster on a long clip is to put a marker on each clip near the beginning that's close to a sync point. Doesn't have to be perfect, but if you put a marker on each clip, and you don't even sync by markers, you still use audio synchronization, but Final Cut will look around those markers first and try to sync there rather than analyzing the entire clip, and that can really speed up the process.
So there's a question from Hilton Wetzer. I edit on Final Cut Pro 10 and Adobe software at work. My company wants to encrypt our computers. I said, please don't. It'll cause lots of issues. What are your thoughts? Depends on what the nature of the encryption is and what they're encrypting. I think, the particular Final Cut, it has to have a drive that's constantly writing to the database in real time. So I don't know. We don't use encryption here, and I don't really have any experience with that. Mark, do you? I think it has to do with
No.
Yeah. I can understand the security reasons behind wanting to do it. I just don't. It doesn't seem like a good idea.
I understand what it means. I have no idea what they mean by encrypting their computers exactly. Yeah, I don't have any direct experience with that. I'm sorry. Right under that, we have his name's Russian, so I can't pronounce it. I apologize.
Right.
When you transcode to optimize from H.264, the 8-bit Radeon 560 card loads at 50%. In other words, I guess he's looking at the load on the card with the activity monitor thing. H.265 10-bit 80% and 10% Intel graphics 10-bit. The Radeon 560 Intel does not load at all. Only CPU. Why this happens? Different cards use different amounts of the GPU versus the CPU is all I can say. Depending on the computer and the card, whether they're doing optimizing, rendering, exporting, different ones, or just compositing, use some different mix of the CPU and the GPU. So I can't answer more than that. Can you?
Not really. I mean, like you said, how Final Cut Pro is using using a particular CPU. It's really hard to know without actually testing it on a given card. Yeah, I'm not sure why. I'm stumped on that one.
There's a question here about, can SugarFX subtitles convert Final Cut Pro 10 captions to Final Cut Pro 10 titles? That's Harris Anana, I'm sorry.
Don't even try.
Ananidas. Harris. I'll just say Harris. I don't know if it can, but there's something else that can do that, which is from Spherico. And it's like Xtitler Pro. I'll just get the website up, and I'll share my screen in a minute after I get it up here. But Spherico.com, not Spherico.com. Darn it. It always does that. Spherico. Spherico, not .com. Guy makes some film tools.
So while you're doing that, David is asking about
building
a title sequence in Fusion instead of Resolve. All right, I'll get to that in a second. Go ahead and finish that since you found it. I'll answer his.
Okay, so I got it. Yeah. So this is spherico.com. You can see here /film tools, and he's got some great tools for converting Xtitle caption convert. Converts Apple's Final Cut Pro caption project into standard title projects. Donationware, freeware. There you go, right there. That's what I would use to do that.
Okay, so there was a question about using Resolve Fusion with well, let me just read it. When building a title sequence in Fusion inside of Resolve, is it best to import the files in the media pool and drag and drop in the node tree? Well, in Resolve, anything that you work with in Resolve has to be imported into the media file first. The media pool is it's their version of the database. It's how everything's tracked. So you can't just, I mean, even if you dropped it straight away into the work area of Resolve, it's still adding it to the media pool. So it's going to be in the media pool either way. So it's just a matter of, yeah.
But in terms of dragging it into the node tree, I generally don't do that. I would have those clips. If I want those clips to be underneath a title, I'd have them in a timeline. I'd have them in the edit page, and then when you go to the Fusion page, it'll automatically be available if you just have the clip over that clip. Now, there are some things to know about if you're building a title and compositing it on top of a video clip that's in a timeline, and then you want to color grade. You have to be a little bit careful about how you handle that process, because you'll end up color grading both the title and that clip is at the same time, unless you make a compound clip first. There's a few things you can do, or you can bring in the clip separately in the node tree, but then it won't respect any trimming you've done in the timeline. So it's a little bit complicated. In my Fusion tutorial, I go into detail about the different ways to approach compositing titles built in Fusion with video clips in Resolve. And I just highly recommend going through that, because you can really get yourself in a problem where you can't really color correct without getting the title separated.
Barry,
anyone have any hands-on with the new Blackmagic design? Yeah, you can answer this.
No, I've only used the Blackmagic 4K pocket
the 6K.
camera.
That's the 6K. Yeah.
I have not used the 4K. I'm the 6K yet. Which, if I was going to buy one, I have a bunch of lenses. I tend to rent cameras, not buy the body. So that's kind of just my working philosophy. If I need a given camera, I'll just rent the body, but then I'll buy the lenses. And that's a camera I definitely want to get my hands on. One thing that I'm going to be getting next week is I'm getting the edit controller that works with DaVinci Resolve. It's got the wheel and the buttons. They're sending me one, so I'm going to be reviewing that pretty soon. I'm looking forward. I want to just see how fast can I actually be on their keyboard versus a mouse, and I'm super curious. I'm going to have one of the first ones, and I'm going to be doing a review on that shortly.
Hey, I would like to demo something that Ron Smith is talking about. He said, some time ago, someone asked how to trim multiple stack clips at the same time. You guys concluded it couldn't be done in Final Cut. It can actually be done using the Option and bracket keys. So let's check that out, because I have an example here, and this is really great. So I'm going to share my screen and go to Final Cut. And here I have several stacked clips. Let me just make them all fill instead of fit, so they fill. They're the same, but it doesn't matter. So normally, if you want to trim them to here, if you hold the Option key down, you can go Option left bracket, and you have to Option left bracket again, Option left bracket again, and it'll do each one. You don't have to click anywhere, it'll do each one. But let me undo that. If you select all of them first, and then hit Option left bracket, all three get trimmed at the same time. That's awesome.
Yeah, I discovered that after a few RippleLives ago that was something I wasn't even aware of. So look, I'm still learning. That's cool.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Who said that? Ron said that. Ron E. Smith. Thank you. That was awesome.
Awesome. So we're about 5 minutes to the top of the hour, and I wanted to.
Oh my God.
Couple of things. One is we have a really popular tutorial that Travis did. He's our technical director behind me. He's so really good, and he did a tutorial on working with audio effects in Final Cut Pro 10. And this is an amazing little short tutorial that goes through all the plugins all the things you can do to improve your audio using the built-in plugins. And right now that's on sale. He's bringing up the code there. You can use that code, and you can I think you save $10, so you can get this tutorial for $20. That's totally worth your time to watch this if you're wondering how compressors, limiters work, expanders, all the ways that you can work with audio. And then we're still running a sale. I did almost a nearly 6-hour DaVinci Resolve training, which I covered the entire app, every page in the app, and Resolve is a big part of what we're doing in the future. We love Final Cut, but we're huge Resolve fans. We've said it quite a few times on our show. We're going to start fielding more Resolve questions because it's an important app, and it's being aggressively developed by Blackmagic Design, and it's the only app right now that works really well with their cameras. I'm sorry. That's a big reason why I like it is their cameras, and the Blackmagic RAW is fantastic. And you can get it right now, $30 off. It's normally $99. You can get it for $30 off, and Travis is bringing up the code there. And then also Mark he did the advanced Resolve color grading tutorial. That's going to be released next week. So next week we're going to have his advanced color grading tutorial. If you want to really understand Resolve's color page, Mark's tutorial
updated for version 16.
Updated for version 16. Yes, you definitely want to check that out. And then lastly, if you are going to go to the summit that's coming up November 7th through 9th, all of the Final Cut Pro 10 users converging on Cupertino, and they're all going to, just a bunch of Final Cut Pro heads there, all of us there together, hanging out, doing workshops. Justine's going to be there again this year. It was just announced. You get to go to the Apple campus. It's you can see it right there on the page, and there's still time to sign up. And I'll be there. Mark will be there, but not the whole time, but he'll be there. And I just want to kind of bring that up because it's going to be a fun event coming up. So if you haven't signed up yet, make sure you do. All right. Anything else, Mark?
I want to mention something real quick. Can I mention something real quick before we sign off? I just want to answer one question here. So Johnny Friday asked, can you recommend the easiest way to add subtitles to a doc project that I've completed? I have Sugar Effects, but never used it. So here's the deal. Like, real quickly, first of all, you need a transcription. So you get a transcript done. And then when you get the transcript, you get an SRT file. You import that SRT file, and Final Cut recognizes it as captions and puts it in as captions. I mean, that's all you have to do. We have a whole tutorial. We did a webinar, and you can get that as a tutorial on our website that's specifically about different transcription services and which ones to use and how good they are.
It's actually right here.
And then how to do that whole process.
Yeah, if you want it, this is another really great one. It's called The Art of the Interview, and then Mark did it here. It's I'll just bring it up on the page, and he covers like every transcription service and how it works.
There's free ones. There's ones that are cheap. There's ones that are more expensive. You kind of get what you pay for. You can always upload a video to YouTube and have them do the transcription, but we call those craptions instead of captions because usually not very good. And then you would download the SRT file from there and import it into Final Cut. But the basic process is you get a transcript, you get the SRT file and bring that into Final Cut, and that just lays them all in there as captions. You want to go through and check them, and then you decide whether you want them to be closed captions or burn them in, and you can do either one in Final Cut.
So one of the Camilio,
try to slip that in.
Yeah, Camilio Estrada said he
can't see the code. Can you? He said somebody's saying they can't see the code. I don't know what it's about.
We showed which code we did. Yours.
Yeah, there was 2 codes, so I should.
Didn't see the audio discount code.
Yeah, he's bringing it up. Yeah, there's the code for the audio right there. Yeah, cool. All right, I think we're good. Another successful edition of RippleLIVE. Want to thank everybody for watching and taking time out of your busy day. I know we're all super busy, but it's great to hang out in this kind of virtual environment, and it's like a little virtual user group. And so thank you for your questions. Those of you who did the super chat, thank you very much. And we look forward to the next edition of RippleLIVE. Mark, do we have a date for the next RippleLIve yet?
What's that?
I don't think we came up with a date for the next RippleLIve.
Oh, for the next one. For the next one, yeah, we'll get you. It'll probably be a month from now. Okay, yeah. So we'll get it out there, but probably a month from now. Yeah, I forgot to do that. All right, thank you guys very much. Very good to see everybody.